this time, I would like to introduce Bruce Cuff. He's running for the office of governor, and so here's Mr. Bruce Cuff.
I'm going to be real short because you can come back on March 31st. You can look at the schedule here. March 31st is going to be a GOP meeting at Calvary Baptist Church at 5:30. So you can hear me speak then, but because we're here to basically hear Sheriff Mack tonight. But what I'm running on is getting local control back in our communities. The current governor that we have, Kate Brown. It's okay to boo if you want. She was appointed. She's not. She wasn't elected, but she's operating in the state as if she has a mandate to govern. She's the governor. However, in Oregon, we set up a 35-day annual session that started a few years ago, and what the Democrats, the leadership there of the Democratic Party, told us was that this was just for tweak the budget and get out of town. Right? This year they broke faith with the people of Oregon, big time. They passed substantive legislation in regards to minimum wage that's going to hurt our state. On the ballot, they're looking at increasing business taxes in the state by 250%, just driving businesses out. So I would love to have your support in this race. I'm one of 5 running. I'm the only conservative in the race. So, but like I said, I'll be back on the 31st, and tonight we're here to hear Sheriff Mack, and we need 36 constitutional sheriffs in Oregon, every single county.
Okay, thank you. And now in the way of an introduction, I know many of you know who Sheriff Mack is, but I thought for those that haven't had a chance to hear him speak or read his materials, I would just give him the credits to his career that he deserves. So bear with me, and I will just hit some of the highlights. There's much more. So Sheriff Mack has about 20 years in law enforcement. He served 11 years in Provo, Utah Police Department in various roles, including time as detective and undercover narcotics officer. He was elected sheriff of Graham County, Arizona in 1988. He served there as sheriff until 1997. He's a graduate of the FBI National Academy, and he has too many roles during his law enforcement career to list, but here are a few: narcotics, hostage negotiator, youth officer, front desk sergeant, detective, sheriff, jail administrator, and so on. It's a long list. In the way of recognitions and awards, he was elected Official of the Year by the Arizona-New Mexico Coalition of Counties in 1994. He was the NRA Law Officer of the Year and inducted into the NRA Hall of Fame. He got the 1995 Cicero Award. Do you know what that is? Cicero Award is for speech givers and speech writers, recognizing their contribution. He also received the Samuel Adams Leadership Award and the Gun Owners of America Defender of the Second Amendment Award. In 1994, Sheriff Mack and 6 other sheriffs challenged the constitutionality of enforcing the Brady Bill, which you all know about, and which went all the way to the Supreme Court. And after a 3-year battle, they won a landmark 5-4 decision based on the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. This was a huge achievement. Mack has been a consultant on numerous cases regarding police abuse, brutality, and other misconduct by public officials. He's an author and speaker, and for the last few years, Sheriff Mack has spoken at about 70 different Tea Party rallies all over the country, ranging from Honolulu to Bangor, Maine. So Mack continues working to educate our sheriffs nationwide about their powers to protect their constituents from abuse by the federal government. He's a graduate of Brigham Young University, and he lives with his wife in Gilbert, Arizona. Please welcome Sheriff Richard Mack.
know, he'd always say, save it for the end. So let's save that for the end, if you will. And let's join together tonight in our efforts to save America. And let me reiterate something to you right off the bat here. This is not about a revolution. This is about a restoration. We're going to put America back just the way the Founding Fathers intended it to be. Okay? And there's nothing subversive about that. There's nothing revolutionary about it. The Revolutionary War was already won. Some people say it wasn't really a revolutionary war. Some people actually say it was a civil war. And regardless, it was done by very few of the colonists who lived in America at the time. But it plain and simply happened because they got to the point that they couldn't take the abuse anymore. And so that's where we're headed. We're going to avoid having to do it again. There is still a peaceful way to do this. And that's what we're about. The CSPOA that I have started, and that's the reason I'm here in front of you tonight, is not a lobby group. We're not even a political group. We're an education group. We are a restoration group. We are an American group. We are a liberty group. Many people have called us and said, please help me, I just got my home foreclosed. Many people say, help me, my son just got arrested. Some people even call and say, I got a traffic ticket. What can you guys do about it? You know? I tell them to wear their seatbelt and drive carefully. Okay? But that's not what we do. We are here to work with you so that you are working with your sheriff to restore liberty in your county. And this is a movement to take back America county by county, state by state. One sheriff and one county at a time. Hopefully we have lots of counties doing that. And we have about 3,080 sheriffs in America. We have determined that we can actually do this. We don't need, you say 36 sheriffs in? 36 in Oregon? Okay, we only have 15 in Arizona. We have huge counties in Arizona. I think Nevada's only 19. Utah's 29, some of the bigger states. Huge counties. But doesn't matter how many you have, but we have figured that we're not going to get all of them, are we? We're not going to get all of them. But we can do this if we take back, or if we get a fourth. Just give me 700 or 800 sheriffs. And we're going to take America back. With that many, just a fourth. You know, a lot of people say, well, it was only 3% that fought the Revolutionary War. That's a little bit of a misnomer. If you read some of the letters that John Adams wrote to his wife Abigail while he was in Europe for 3 years, away from his family for 3 years, negotiating loans and support from Europe. And if we hadn't had France help us towards the latter half of the war, of the Revolutionary War, we would have never won. But France brought their navy in and really made the difference in the victory of the Revolutionary War. So John Adams was to diplomacy as George Washington was to the actual running of the military aspects of the war. And he said to his wife in one of his letters that it appears that about a third of the people support the war. So I believe that's really where it lines up today as far as supporting liberty. We have 1/3 of the people that support freedom and liberty in our Constitution in this country. We have another third who could care less. And we have another third who totally support the tyrants, the Tories of America today. So the Tories and loyalists are there. So no matter what, we're going to side with government. Government's good. Government takes care of us. Government gives us free stuff. Has never been freedom. Never. And the bigger government gets, the smaller liberty shrinks. You can't have both. You can't have both big government huge, humongous government and abundant freedom. As government grows, freedom shrinks. And so in looking at that whole picture today, that's why we came up with, it appears to be one of the only, maybe not even a handful of peaceful, effective solutions that we have left. And so we're trying to do everything we can to avoid the violence and another civil war, revolutionary war, whatever you want to call it. So this is why I'm here today. And I formed the CSPOA about 6 years ago. And right after I wrote the book, the county sheriff, America's Last Hope. And this gave birth to the constitutional sheriff movement. And it was such an amazing book, only 50 pages long, but it just took off, and it's self-published. I had a publisher looking it over and was trying to get it going, and I fired him, and I said, just send it back to me, I'll do it myself. I just don't have patience with people that don't move when I tell them. So I just took it back and I self-published it. It's done about 100,000 copies. And if you don't have it, you join CSPOA tonight, we can give you this one. And you get the sequel, Are You a David? For 30% off, 33% off. So this, and why do I have these here? Because they're tools of liberty. And before you take these to your sheriff, which every one of you should do, you need to read it yourself. Don't take the sheriff stuff that you don't know about. Okay? He's gonna be wanting you, or you're gonna be wanting him. We want you to talk to him about it. Okay? You have to know what you're talking about. Very powerful books. And this is kind of the manual for the constitutional sheriff. And then during the first 5 years of this being out, I heard all the excuses from sheriffs and some of the other problems with what's going on pursuant to this book. And I responded to all of them in this sequel, Are You a David? I want to know, are you a David? And you women, are you a David?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
I'm willing to stand against Goliath. And the book defines who Goliath is and what we need to do to neutralize him. And the way to neutralize him isn't going in front of him and waving a red flag and saying, come and get me. Okay? Remember, we're working together with our sheriffs. And we're going to go through that process tonight. Now, I'm going to show you the evidence. And I've been here before. How many of you were here when I spoke here 5, 6 years ago? Raise your hand if you were here. Oh, good. Mostly new ones. Okay, good. Everybody's new just about, except 90% of you are new. Good. So we've got a lot of work to do tonight. I'm going to try to stay focused. I'm going to see where we go with doing question and answer. I hope to answer most of your questions during the process. And if we have time, okay, I can't hardly see it because the light's shining in my eyes. So we'll see if we have time for some question and answer. I do like to hear from you, but remember, are you listening? Okay, good. It has to be a question. If you get up and give your own talk, I'll stop you and I'll say, hey, where's the question? Where's the question? So everybody knows the rules on that. Has to be a question. Do you hear me? Okay. Okay. Is it on behind me right now? Okay, good. Looks like we're up and running. This first clip I'm going to show you is a deputy sheriff in Albany, New York, by the name of Deputy Stan Lennox. And he's actually working security in the Albany airport in New York. And I'm going to tell you right now, this deputy is all we're after. This is what we want. When we formed the CSPOA, this epitomizes what we want. Go ahead, hit right arrow. Play it.
The YouTube video goes viral.
internet by two activists who brought a camera into the
Little louder.
International Airport while they passed out flyers. Now, it led to a heated dispute over First Amendment rights. That's our top story. Hi, Benita. Well, as you'll see in the video clip, an airport spokesman tries to stop these activists from their mission, but a sheriff's deputy steps in to settle the confrontation and the right to free speech.
So, hey everyone, this is Ashley Jessica. I am here at Albany International Airport.
The young woman is standing outside the security checkpoint at the airport, telling the camera that she's there to hand out flyers to travelers, reminding them of their right to opt out of getting a body scan, which she claims carries health risks.
Hold on. First of all, turn this off right away.
Airport spokesman Doug Myers tells the crew to stop videotaping and to go downstairs, which they agreed to do, and they are confronted again.
Sir, you have $1 million insurance policy here. You're violating the airport authority guidelines. That doesn't matter to us at all, okay? So you check that out. No, you're in our airport.
But as the tension builds, Sheriff's Deputy Stan Lennox steps in, separating the two parties, then lays down the law.
Obviously, this is your constitutional right, okay? As far as we're concerned, you're not breaking any laws, okay? That's what we want to get across to you guys.
Myers objects, ordering airport employees to allow only ticketed passengers upstairs, accusing the activists of blocking the escalator. But once again, Deputy Lennox defends their First Amendment right.
We don't know who you are. I'm Jason Burns. Let me see your identification. I don't need to show you my identification.
He doesn't have to show you his identification.
The activists continue their mission. The video later posted to YouTube and goes viral. Not the kind of attention Deputy Lennox is used to.
That's a little overwhelming. I mean, I was doing my job. I did the right thing. I felt I did the right thing, protecting people's First Amendment rights.
So we had a CSPOA convention in St. Charles, Missouri back in 2013. This had happened just a few months before that. And we honored him as Deputy Sheriff, CSPOA Deputy Sheriff of the Year. The same convention that we had where we honored Sheriff David A. Clark Jr. from Milwaukee as a CSPOA Sheriff of the Year that year. Our first CSPOA Sheriff of the Year was right here from Oregon, Sheriff Glenn Palmer. Coincidentally, Sheriff Palmer was the first sheriff in America to ask me for our training. This was about 15 years. But I was doing constitutional training for law enforcement at that time. I didn't do it very often. It was the first one ever, and I'd done it for little departments here and there before that, and I certainly did it for my agency when I was sheriff. But Sheriff Palmer was the first one in the country to have that training. The training that we offer every sheriff in the country. And as a matter of fact, in 2 weeks from today, I'll be in Virginia doing it again, and we've had two sheriffs in Virginia, Culpeper and Greene counties, that have had the training just within the last 6 or 7 months. So we want to do this for every sheriff's office and state sheriff's association in the country, and that's where you come in. You have to realize how powerful you are in influencing the sheriff. If the sheriff hears from you, and he hears maybe 10, 12 of you ask him about reading the book, or having the constitutional training, or asking him plain and simply, Sheriff, are you a constitutional sheriff? And then vet him about that. And then see if he'll do the training and try to get him to, if he has a dozen people ask him about that, you know what he's going to do? He's going to go home and tell his wife, I've got everybody in the community talking to me about this CSPOA, this constitutional sheriff stuff. My gosh, I'm going to have to do it or something. They won't get off my back. And the first convention that we had back in 2012 in Las Vegas, we had 95 sheriffs show up, and about half of them reported, all those Tea Party groups, they just wouldn't leave me alone until I agreed to go to this convention. And they admitted it. I mean, the sheriff said, I'm here because the Tea Party groups kept after me to come. And it showed once again the power of we the people. And so, just so you know, this is all we're after. And this deputy sheriff gets it. What did he do? He told the airport authority a guy who has a lot to do with hiring police at the airport, he told them, I'm not going to give you their identification. They don't have to give you their identification. He's defending would-be suspects. You know those people that hand out flyers? You got to watch them. And so the deputy is not going to abuse his authority, misuse his badge, and get all hot and bothered and emotional trying to defend. Did you hear what the guy said? It was a little bit muffled. And I wanted that to be just a little bit louder. But he said, do you have $1 million insurance policy? Then you're violating guidelines of the airport. Is that kind of typical? That we ignore the Constitution, or that we throw it and trample on it while we support the guidelines of the state, or we support the statutory traffic laws above the Constitution? Doesn't everybody know that there is no law that supersedes the Constitution, and nothing in the Constitution that supersedes the Bill of Rights? Do we know why the founders put the Bill of Rights added to this Constitution? At first, Madison was mad at Samuel Adams and Patrick Henry and a few of the other radicals, John Hancock. A few of these guys, these right-wing radical conservatives. The Constitution was great. We were inspired by God, and now you guys come back. He says, I find that offensive. What's the matter with you guys? And they said, James, come on. It doesn't have a Declaration of Rights. And they got it. And he goes, you know what? You're right. Let's get back to the drawing board. This is 2 years after the Constitution was signed and already in effect. He says, we didn't go far enough. You're right. And so they said, let's get together and form this declaration. Do you know how many they came up with? How many would we come up with today if we did it? I know. They did the same thing. 189. That's the original Bill of Rights. And they said, no, come on. We got to keep this simple. That would be longer than the original Constitution. And they dwindled them down to 12. And the states, the real power here, the states ratified 10. And these were what I call the untouchables. They cannot be touched by government. We came up, the founders came up with a few set of rules and principles, and there's not just 10, is there? There's not 10. There's 5 in the First Amendment alone. So you add them all up, there's about 27 or 28 in the Bill of Rights. 10 Bill of Rights. Can you name the 5 in the First Amendment? Freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, right to peaceably assemble, and to file grievances against government. Those are the 5. And then, of course, Second Amendment. Third is that they can't force their way in, soldiers can't force their way into your home. Do you know that that happened? The Hessians and Redcoats would just come to somebody's house and say, we live here now. We're going to occupy your home. Thank you very much. Oh, and by the way, you parents, you now live with the kids in the loft because we're taking the master bedroom. And they would just live there. And then they would do their policing during the day, okay? And so that's why the Third Amendment is in there, is to prevent that. And so overall, what was the purpose of the Constitution? Well, we all know about to, place limitations and parameters on government, okay? But the real intent of the Founding Fathers when they wrote that document was to what? Make sure that all the abuse and tyranny from King George III could never happen again. And so when they came back 2 years later, they said, okay, we did pretty good there, and yes, it was inspired, and it was an amazing miracle, but let's make sure that all King George III leaders or presidents of this great country from now on to infinity will never make any mistake what we mean.